Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Integrated Man Project podcast. Before we jump into this week's episode, I did want to share about an exclusive membership I'm going to be launching to help shape the Integrated Man Project community. If this is something you'd be interested in, where you will be co-laboring with me, sharing your ideas, giving input, giving me feedback, part of kind of this process of creating something bigger and better for all men, I would love for you to join. And if this is something you're interested, please reach out to me. Email me at integratedmanproject@gmail.com. You could also send me a direct message on Instagram as well, or on LinkedIn. I would love for you to reach out to me. I would love for you to be part of this exclusive group to help, again, shape and form this Integrated Man community. Because as you do this, as we share in this journey together, we're going to create a community of men around the world where we become more grounded, more adaptable, more resilient, and more authentic men. So come on and join. If you're interested in this, please reach out to me. And without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Integrated Man Project podcast. I'm excited for this guest to join us for the conversation today, tonight, this afternoon, morning, whenever you're tuning in, listening. I'm excited to kind of jump in. And before we kind of get into the topic, I just wanted to welcome Cory to the show. How you doing this evening, Cory?
Never better. I'm here with you. What better place could it be? We're getting our kids down to bed, getting them all potty trained up. We're good to go. This is a good life.
Okay. Yeah. Kids to bed, potty training. We were just talking just a moment ago in the virtual green room about being a dad, 3 kids, kind of like getting them down, and audibles happening throughout the night, things moving and shifting. Actually, when my wife just walked by, you didn't see this. It's kind of secret. She grabbed the water bottle from my oldest son to go to his room. And here we are, like you said. What a better place to be. So where are you at right now, Cory? I know we're kind of the same time zone, but where are you calling in from?
Yeah, I'm here in Tucson, Arizona. So I've called it home for 18 years, went to South Carolina for 6 years for college, and missed it so much I came back in 2011. I've been here ever since. So a part of the country where we don't change our clocks to help make it easy for everybody.
Yeah, easy or hard. So you guys don't change clocks. It just stays the same all year round.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's a pro of living in Arizona, right? Is that is the clock change? That's one thing we always define is, and then having time change comes for us is like, okay, when do we need to start bedtime now? At what point do we need to do this adjustment? And it's always confusing every year. Anyway, so can you tell us a bit about who you are, kind of what you're doing right now, and kind of, who's Cory?
Yeah. So I'm a drug dealer. Just kidding. Well, kind of. So I'm that go and not got your attention.
Client therapist confidentiality. I don't have to report you. We're okay. So it stays between you and me. No one's listening.
So I'm a pharmacist by trade since 2011.
Close to a drug dealer.
Legally. If you have a prescription, I can deal some drugs. So I've been doing that since 2011. I also, in addition to that, I am an improv comedian, so I've been doing that since 2013. I know all of the pharmacist comedians you could have had. You had me, so thank you. That's a joke, by the way. Pharmacists are not known for our humor, so I've been doing that. I'm also an author, so I wrote my first book in 2000 called Permission to Care. And relevant to your wonderful program, I have a book coming out as we record here in the early part of May, coming out on May 12th, which is Mother's Day, called I Guess I'm a Dad Now, a humorous handbook for newish dads who don't want to suck. So integrating some of that humor into my experience as a father of 3 kids, 6, almost 4, and 1 just turned 11 months old today. So drinking from the fire hose of fatherhood and trying to get out in the world. I speak to healthcare organizations. I apply improv comedy to healthcare, to business, learning myself, trying to help others learn how to listen, communicate, empathize. So I got a lot of unconventional things going on, and it's hard to explain myself in a sentence. So I used like 7 sentences there.
No, that's totally okay. Pharmacist, comedian, improv, dad, first book, second book on the way. It's almost like a baby, another baby we'll be birthing here soon. Although you already caught the baby because you just held it up, although it hasn't officially been birthed. But, again, part of why I wanted to show is this exact reason is to talk about your latest book, first and foremost. And so can you tell us a bit about what was kind of why did the world need this book? What was the purpose of this book? Give some insight into that.
Yeah, so part of the impetus for the book was actually a shift I made in my career a couple of years ago. So I had been working full time as a pharmacist. We had the two kids. We're working on number three, and I have this side thing that I'm doing with speaking and writing. My wife is working full time, and I decided to cut to part time. And so, in part of my part time work, part time dad duties, being out at the park with my kids, spending time with them as a dad, which is unfortunately, I think, not something that a lot of dads get a chance to do. So soaking it up, being
Yeah.
there, watching my kids play, having fun, and looking around at the other dads and thinking, we need some help.
Mm.
Whether it was them checked out on their phones, whether it was, I work in healthcare, I'm a diabetes and obesity specialist. So whether they are rocking the full on dad bods, sort of sloppily going through life, ignoring their kids, and then all the things that I was taught as a dad, or not really taught, but what society tells you you're air quotes supposed to expect
Mm.
that turn out not to be true. I thought, boy, I wish I'd have known this with my first kid. And then I applied it more with my second kid. And then, well, a lot of what I'm observing is kind of absurdly hilarious. And I try to be funny. So if I put this in a funny book, dads might actually want to read it too.
Yeah. Could you speak more to that point? Can you speak more to that point about the humor and the dads would read that book? Can you?
Yeah. So when we were expecting our first kid, my wife and I are pretty, we get down to business. Like when we have a goal, we want to take care of it. We read up, we learn about it. The world of podcasting has allowed us and anybody to learn almost anything they want and become an expert in it. So
Yeah.
becoming parents, we gravitate towards learning. And we read 3 or 4 parenting books. And I think they were, what we read were good. They were helpful. But I think there's a lot of parental literature that is very dry, heavy, somber, which in fairness, being a dad is it's a job where if we fail, society collapses. So don't get me wrong, like we're important. But I
Yeah.
think for me, growing up, I always enjoyed watching comedies. When I was in pharmacy school, I would make jokes. I would write little funny notes to myself to help me remember things. And sadly, if you told me to recite the Krebs cycle, I couldn't do it. But you tell me to recite every Simpsons episode from seasons 3 through 7, and I pretty much could nail it. So the importance of humor for me is, I think, getting dads a little bit more relaxed,
Mm.
willing to read this, willing to come back to it, and then willing to implement it. Because great comedy comes from a place of truth. You think
Mm.
of something like Seinfeld or The Office; they're rooted in reality.
Mm.
And I think a lot of what I'm coming from here is personal stories that where I'm making fun of myself rather than like making fun of my kids. And so
Mm.
I'm sort of trying to humanize myself to the dad that would read this, to not think I'm some sort of super dad, but I'm a regular dad figuring it out. And here are some things that I
Mm.
figured out. I'd say trial and error, but mostly error
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah. And when we had a conversation when we first met and talked about, having you on, in a way, I think one of the ways that we connected was through how to reach men, how to reach dads
Yes.
specifically on bringing, for lack of a better word, education. Right now, you and me, I'm generalizing here. You would consume literature. That's something that I would do, consume literature. I'm a therapist by trade. I read parenting books as part of my graduate school and then kept reading. And then, all the big ones like Dan Siegel, Tina Bryson, all those Whole Brain Child, No Drama Discipline, always
Mhm.
had the books, right? To prep. But that's just because I was wired that way and like I want to learn. But by and large, a lot of people, while there's a lot of people that read, there's also a whole lot of people that don't really read or consume literature in that way. And when we take it now to men, it's like, how do we reach men? How do we speak the language of men that would, one, like not be shaming, not be, distancing, not like, but how do we get them engaged in something that's, like you said, the beginning of your book kind of starts off like how important dads are, like really how important dads are, and
Yeah.
not just anecdotally, but you draw some statistics in there and the like what would happen if we just showed up as dads and actually got rid of some of the, you said kind of deadbeat dads and other things like that, what would do to our world. And so, the importance of reaching men, I think, is one of the biggest needs and challenges right now in our modern kind of day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's sort of the comedic trope of, honey, did you read the baby book yet? I'll get around to it. I'll get around to it. Have you read it yet? No. And then it's like, it's that sort of like the nagging wife, the dad who's too busy checking his fantasy football team to read like the one book. And then the baby comes and she said, remember the book? And they're like, well, actually, I didn't read it. And like, I asked you to read one book and you couldn't do it. Well, to me, if they read one book and it was this book, would it make you a perfect dad? No. But like as the subtitle said, if you can suck a little bit less, I think we'd be better off. And that's why I put that in the beginning of the book, because I think any new dad unless you've helped raise other kids, you really don't know what you're doing. And that's
Right.
okay. And I think I kind of make that clear. Like you're sort of given this baby, like, oh, hello, nice to meet you. Should we have an
Right.
emotional connection? Should I talk to you? Should we play catch? Like, what are we supposed
Hmm.
to do here? And then it
Yeah.
goes immediately to mom. Mom's feeding the baby, and you're like, well, what do I do with my hands now? So,
Yeah.
and this I think will prepare you for that, especially that first year where it's just a fire hose of life coming at you. Like, what do I do? How do I support my wife? How do I take care of myself? There's not a lot of tactical, like how to change a diaper tips in this book.
Hmm.
There's YouTube videos for that, but it's how do you not go crazy while you're changing a diaper at midnight and dealing with a wife who's recovering from a major, childbirth's hard on the woman, and now she's expected to feed this baby, and you better be there for her. So I
Yeah.
think if you read this book, you're gonna be ready to go, much more so than if you sit on the sidelines and just hope it goes okay.
Yeah. And with the books that you did read before you decided to write yours, you kind of mentioned they're maybe a little more serious, a little more heady.
Mhm.
While that's important, I guess, what did you see a barrier for men engaging that book? Was it just because it was, in that sense, like too heady, too serious, and you saw that, hey, that's just going to be, guys aren't going to read that as much, or like, what is your kind of anecdotal experience, or what you noticed, and why you said I need to do humor here?
It feels unattainable. Like you're given
Mm.
this somber, important thing to do, and all these steps to go. And I have friends that have read all, mothers and fathers who read all the parenting books, and the baby comes, and the baby didn't read the books, and they're thinking there's something wrong with them. So not
Yeah.
only have they devoted all this time to learning these, like I run with some type A's, so they have these like checklists and plans, and the
Yeah.
baby's just like, I'm gonna pour gasoline on your little plans, and I'm gonna light a match and blow it up, and then you're stuck. You're stuck in this predetermined plan, and you don't know what to do. And then if you're a dad trying to read these books and you're given these specific instructions and plans and things you have to do, you're like, I work 40 hours a week, sometimes 50, 60 hours a week.
Mhm.
I'm out of shape. I have these habits I need to fix. And now I have to do all these perfect things or my kid's going to be screwed up. Like, forget this. It's like learn helplessness versus
Ah.
here's some simple things that, like, oh, well, Cory one time let his kids go down the stairs and they're okay. Well, if that guy who seems to have it together can make a mistake. Well, I'll make some mistakes, but avoid the big ones and do some of these small things along the way to prepare yourself to be in a better place to take care of that kid or kids
Yeah.
for like for us.
Yeah. Or kids, plural. And you mentioned, this you kind of hinted at, you kind of sort of like more than implied, kind of in between explicit and implied, the idea and notion of like, while you read the books, I'm wondering what you thought growing up, your training to become a father. Do you think, was your growing up kind of were you think you were well trained to like become a dad right away? Do you think society was training us well to become what to expect as a dad, as a parent? Or do you think there was
Um,
something that was lacking?
no, not at all. I think that media does a terrible job of preparing dads for what we should do versus
Mm.
rather like what is the societal expectation. I mean, we don't need to dive into the full media portrayal of dads, but they're not generally positive. They're the Homer Simpsons of the world, Peter Griffins. I know these are cartoons, but
Yeah.
they're the knuckle dragging doofuses who all the wife wants is for him to get dressed and go to a nice dinner. He can't figure it out, or he forgets to, we were watching Jingle All the Way this Christmas to Arnold Schwarzenegger. All he has to do is buy the toy. He can't buy the toy. Like
Yeah.
we're hapless, and we're the weak link of the family. So
Yeah.
I like, it's a joke among like another comedian and I who became a dad. Like, we send each other pictures of, like, we put the diapers on our kid's head and we just put our hands up like, we're the bumbling dads. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so no. Sorry, that was a
Yeah.
long rambling way of saying no. Like, we're not
Yeah.
really prepared well.
Yeah. And you said earlier, like, obviously within comedy, there's always, a grain of truth to that, and some,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering, what do you think has been possibly problematic with that kind of trope being continually hit, of being the kind of blubbering idiot dad? Like, what's been, while humor, right? Again, grain of truth.
Yeah.
What's some of the problems that you have either seen or experienced personally with that kind of continual, hitting over the head of this kind of father?
Well, personally, when I take my kid to the doctor or I'm at a library day for a little, like the toddler time at the library, there's a lot of surprise from the other people. Like, oh, you're here as a dad. Like, it's almost
Mm.
unexpected. Or if I'm at the park with them, like, it's me. And like, it's kind of cool. I made a dad friend at the park, but it's all the
Mm.
moms, which again, traditional society, the man's the one making the money, he's at the work, and I have no problem with it. But on a personal level, there's a little level of surprise and from others.
Mm.
But I think on a societal level, I mean, you see this, you're a therapist, you probably know more than me, but men are suffering. And I see this in my
Yeah.
patients, like men are hurting.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, that learned helplessness idea of like, if all my role models are bumbling idiots, if every commercial shows the dad, well, I couldn't make dinner, so I had to order Chili's or whatever takeout is
Yeah.
on, like
Yeah.
that becomes what you believe. And then all of a sudden
Mm.
you can't do the things that you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so where does that lead? Again, it leads to weak men, weak dads. And again, you'll read this book, you'll know I'm not perfect. But I think that the self-reflection of being able to understand where you fall short and then try to fix those shortfalls versus saying, well, society says I should suck, so I guess I'll just suck, and that'll be that. Hopefully my kids will turn out okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I have experienced that too. I think you're right. Men, generally speaking, not all men, but a good portion of men that you've probably seen and worked with and helped as well as I have been suffering, right? And I think suffering with some degree of what does it mean to be a healthy, strong, whatever that means, man, dad.
Yeah.
And what are my role models? And often this is not the first time that I've had this exact conversation with other men, with other dads of like, yeah, we see it. We get that there's definitely a grain of truth in there. And at the same time, the problem with that is that if we keep perpetuating this is the story, well, then what are we doing? Like, why not portray men who are embodying care for themselves, care for their wife, having some level of intelligence. So it's either, I feel like the tropes of men are either the blubbering idiot dad or like the full on narcissist, like, abuser. Like it's these two extremes. It's like either the complete idiot or, now there's a few things that I think have shown somewhat of a decent men, but that's not the norm. It's more of these other extremes that we're seeing constantly over and over and over. And probably part of the learned helplessness is like, well, what do I do? Because what are we taught in school? Are we taught about what it means to be a healthy man, healthy dad, future father, etc.? No. We're not taught this stuff at all. In high school and college, we're not talking about this stuff. And then all of a sudden you're a dad.
Yeah.
Right. And
there's no test to pass. It's just sort of, biologically we know how you become a dad. It's sort of just that, and there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So,
but there's no test. There's no training. And I think part of what the intro of your book is like one of the most important things in our life is being a dad. And if we have weak men, weak dads, like society breaks, right? It's like we need men and fathers who are healthy, have awareness and are willing to grow and admit, hey, I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to grow and learn. And so out of curiosity, what was like your model of a father growing up?
My dad was great. I think, as I get older, it's the crazy, I think it's an insurance commercial, but like, you're becoming your parents. And it's funny, my wife will be like, you sound like your dad or your mom or whatever. And I've reached this point of, because the end of the book, the book's, it's a handbook for being dads, but there's a lot of comedy, but I wrap it up with like an earnest story about my father and my father-in-law, two sons of a small town, and how the people they've interacted with became people that I cared for. And somehow they found out that I was related to both of them through either, my dad or through marriage. And they had nothing but nice things to say. So on the sense of that, my dad, like I couldn't ask for a better dad. He was present. He was a teacher. So he was there every summer, every winter break. He was a great college athlete. I was not a good athlete, and he was super patient with me because I think he recognized like I could yell at him, but he's not going to be any better. He's doing the best he can. So he was a great model as far as, and my grandfather too. Jenks men work hard. We do multiple jobs. Like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree there. He would explain, he's teaching swim lessons in the summer. Well, there's our summer vacation. That's how we're paying for it. So he showed me the value of hard work. His side of the family was not one that really talked about feelings or sometimes talked at all. My grandparents were the model of the silent generation, but again, loving, caring, there for me. And so there's moments where I'm like, oh man, I wish he was there to, even now, like I would love to talk about my feelings with my dad. And then I realize it's not him. I can't expect that from him. He's given me everything that he's given 100% of what he was taught, who he is. Yeah. So in that sense, like awesome. My temper can be short, and then I hear myself in him, and my wife will be like, you sound like your dad again. And I'm like, I know. So the foibles and the problems, I shouldn't highlight those. It's not fair to him. But where do we learn how to be a dad? For those of us who dads were around, for better or worse, we learn from them. So I learned a lot of great from him. And then we all have our little ticks and things that we can do better. But on the whole, couldn't ask for a better dad.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've done, so, definitely some level of awareness of being able to accept the good and who he was and what he taught you, all the positive things
Oh
of,
yeah.
of your family kind of lineage, as well as, okay, you know what? We didn't do a lot of emotional talk, but here's what he did do. And I'm not going to fault him for it. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Here's what he did, and which is different than his generation.
Hmm.
And he really taught me some amazing things.
Yeah.
Right. And we're still connected, you know?
Yeah. And that's the cool thing is, yeah, knock on wood, he's still around. He's 70. We play golf together. He's a great,
Mm,
he teaches our kids how to swim.
mm,
My father-in-law is a farmer, retired fighter pilot. So he has all the cool toys and the farm stuff. My dad was the jock. So he does the sports stuff. My father-in-law does the blue collar outdoor fun, play on the tractor stuff. So
hmm
it's a nice balance between the two. And
yeah.
yeah, he just, he really showed me how to live well, how to take care for your family, and how to work. That was one thing he showed me. He had a great work ethic. Has a great
Yeah.
work ethic. He still works. He still teaches. So
Uh, like
he
part-time,
likes what
like
he does. So
he like doesn't retire, just I'm going to keep teaching type of a thing.
yeah, he's at the college level now. So he's
Okay.
a
Okay.
professor. So
Professor.
he gets to keep young with all those college kids. And
Yeah.
he's a PE teacher. So he does a lot of physical activity and stays active there. So he
Oh,
was
nice.
also a great, in that sense, a great role model in physical fitness too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm wondering, pivot a little bit, but I mean, following this conversation, like being able to accept your dad, and I think, by the way, that's for some listening, right? They have different experiences of whether an absentee father, a
Hmm.
father that was, downright abusive. I mean, anywhere in
Yeah.
between. And so you're right; these are fathers, our biological fathers, for better or worse, leave a mark on us, leave
Yeah.
an impact. And I've talked to numerous people with dads who are not even present, and those absentee dads leave a mark on like our psyche, our well-being. And there's always this longing of like wanting to be seen as enough or approved from our
Hmm.
fathers. It's like I haven't talked to one person, and I've worked with well over 1,000 people, even my own life, of like, we all want that father approval of being seen as, enough, having worth,
Hmm.
all those things. And so it's the power of dad. And I could tell that with your dad, you feel that sense of like, okay, I have an identity, and I feel that. Now with that said, the shift here is, so here's what my dad taught me that was, well, part of the lineage, a part of our family heritage that's really, really good, of work ethic and showing up and being present. It sounds like your dad was present and like engaged with you guys and all those
Hmm.
things. And an area of growth, and you kind of mentioned this, is, well, we didn't do a lot of emotional talk. So how have you kind of, so to speak, carried the ball forward with that? What does that look like for you? How did you develop kind of maybe emotional intelligence? What did that path or journey look like, or currently looks like for you right now?
Well, fortunately, he married into a family that did a lot of emotional talking, so
Okay.
that got passed down to me, I think. But along the way, I've worked with various mental health professionals, therapists, for whatever has weaved in and out of my life, really since high school,
Mm,
and trying to reflect and have that self awareness of where I'm falling short. And I guess the biggest thing is this is an improv lesson, being willing to listen. So I have a
mm,
great wife who's honest with me, and then being honest with myself and saying, like we said, we kind of went through the checklist of like, dad taught me this, this, and this, and these were great things, and I want my kids to learn this.
mm.
Well, I also want them to have a father who, if they want to talk about their feelings, great. My sons at this point don't want to talk about them, and I'm like, but I'm ready to do it if you want to. But so I'm there with that, and I think along the way, the moments we fall short, we lose. For me, it's I lose my temper, raise my voice, and my parents, I love them. They're
I do it too. Sorry, those that are listening, I did raise my hand, even as a
I
trained
saw a hand raised.
therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So those watching
um,
got it, but yeah,
yeah. So I think that willingness to admit your mistakes to yourself, to your kids,
mm,
and then try to do better the next day, and
yeah,
having a good sounding board from those around you who will keep you honest
mm,
is a real important part of that too.
yeah. And who do you use as your like, who is your sounding board right now in your life as
I
a?
mean, honestly, my wife is she's lovingly blunt with me when
Mm,
it's, Cory, do you hear yourself? Do you hear your dad in that? And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to admit
mm,
it, but I'm going to go outside and breathe and take that. So,
yeah,
she's just like, walk away, walk away. And that's like one of the lessons I have in the book. Like, if you're
mm,
getting frustrated, it's like, walk away. And so I
yeah,
think for me, I married well, and
mm,
she lets me know, and not in a way like she's not my therapist. That's an inappropriate husband wife relationship, and she doesn't try to be,
yeah,
but she brings those things out in me. And then, as I've said, and over the course of my years, even since becoming a dad, I've had whenever I feel like it's sort of like a little mental health checkup, I have someone I can talk to that's a professional too. So not afraid to admit it. I'm a man. I work hard. I'm a dad. And sometimes, talk about your feelings, whether it's professional or we have a great group of dads in our neighborhood that will get together and go for a walk, go for a ruck. Just awesome sounding board. I have a guy, one of the dads I go for a run with every week. And it's usually just like a vent sesh of because he's got 2 young kids about our kids' age. So it's just vent it out, talk through it. And he's someone who's had a parental relationship that's required him to do a lot of work too. And then it's just so amazing to hear him talk about like hearing his reflections on what I go through with my family and my challenges. And he's like, well, that's not a healthy relationship. That's something you should ignore. That's their problem projected on you. I'm like, yep, you have done the work. So I guess can't ignore my fellow dads here in the neighborhood too.
Yeah. And was that like a natural, easy process for you initially to kind of do that examination of like, here's all the good things my dad taught me, and here's some things that I want to make sure that I'm maybe, again, going a step further than my father? Was that like, hey, yep, I'm doing this? Or was there a barrier to that? Was that easy?
For me, it was easy. I don't know. I think it's going to be different. It's going to vary for every person, but I'm someone who's maybe like a huge fault, like self-deprecating to a fault. So I'm always looking almost too much at sometimes like looking at my shortfalls, my negatives, and that self-reflection of, especially when the first kid was coming, like, okay, what are the habits I do not want my kids to have? Because I looked at the things I got from my parents and I thought, okay, I cannot give them this, this, and this. I do not want them to, they're going to get bad stuff from me and my wife. It's inevitable. It's called being a parent and having kids. But I just like, what are the broad strokes of things I don't want them to pick up from me? So that was easy because I was able to look back on my life and think, what habits have made it harder? Where did those come from? Again, not blaming my parents. Everyone who has kids are just people who are human doing their best. As long as they're not actively maliciously harming you. In some cases, that's the case. Mine were not. They're flawed people. We all are. They have kids. The flaws get passed down. And it's interesting as I see, Tucson being a small town, seeing my friends and their kids and the traits that jump generation to generation. And then thinking back to the dads and my friends, like, oh, I get why they acted like that. Their dad was a jerk. Okay. Well, I kind of forgive them, but they were still jerks.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of see the story there and have some understanding. And you're right. I think it's different for every person, like every guy, every dad, that it's, in your case, easy. Like I want to reflect and go. Other times for other men I've worked with plenty, that's like, there's a lot of barriers to that of just kind of getting stuck in maybe some of the people you've seen in your hometown, kind of getting stuck in similar patterns and not really being fully aware, conscious of it. Like, hey, I'm kind of reliving maybe some of the stuff that I didn't like as a kid, or they're kind of just stuck, right?
Yeah. The cycle continues.
And it's really easy to get sucked into that cycle. I mean, you are practicing some level of consistent awareness, and you have a spouse who's really like willing to kind of help bring awareness and shine a light on it, and you're responding well, like, yeah, okay, I got to do that. And so you have this kind of relationship of willing to kind of help each other, which is an amazing thing. And I'm wondering, what are some practices that, and you kind of sort of hinted this previously with when you start to maybe sound like your dad, maybe it sounds like you're raising your voice or getting a hot tempered. You did mention you might go outside and like take some breaths. So can you speak to some of like the practical practices that you find that kind of help you maybe regulate your nervous system, or when you're feeling kind of overwhelmed or super frustrated, super angry, super stressed out, things you do to kind of help you bring to more calm state to be more proactive and present with your family?
Yeah. Well, I think a huge key for me, and this is a theme I've come across with a lot of other dads, is I got to start my day with some exercise. I got to get that physical outlet out. So it's sort of that one's, sort of a preventative measure. Like I get up early, I do some sort of workout, a walk, strength training, whatever it is. I think that being fit as a father is a must on the taking care of your family. But that's like the prophylactic at the beginning of the day. And what's really helped me in those moments is trying to hear myself. And then oftentimes hearing it happens when I hang out with my parents and I hear them saying the same, like, because they're very protective and they love to use the word careful with my kids. And we're trying to like not use that very broad word that doesn't help toddlers understand anything. So
I'm the same.
I try to hear myself, but a big thing is hearing myself and then asking myself, does this really matter? Like, does it really matter if the markers are on that table or the marker table? It does not. There's only so much parent capital I have, and I want to save it for when there's like a safety issue. Like if I raise my voice, it should be, you're in danger. and they should know that, versus I'm in danger of my OCD being triggered. Like that's not that's not an emergency. So a big thing there is hearing myself. And then really the best thing is within safety's reason, like walking away and just taking a breath. Getting outside for me is a big one. And we found for our kids, getting them outside when they're in tantrum mode, sort of like, oh, look at the moon, look at the trees, look at the wind blowing, like getting them into like some semblance of looking at nature also helps. So that kind of brings me back to a calmer place.
Yeah. And I would agree with the nature, getting my kids out. That's something I found, one, for me, how life-giving that is to get out of the, take a step back, walk away, take a breath, and getting outside, go walk on the grass, take a breath, look at the trees, hear the birds. And there'd be times with like, if it's in here, if things are in the house, it's like things aren't changing, I'll take them outside and just kind of like, it is really a magical thing that could begin to occur. Not that it like always stops things on the dime. Sometimes it does. But other times you just see just nature begin to kind of help just in a way regulate and help them kind of get to a place that's calmer. And really the benefit of that. And so, the breath work is huge, and being able to be aware of our nervous system state too, of knowing when we need to like take that break. And I'm wondering for you, like, it sounds like one of your telltale signs is when I'm starting to, is it raising voice? Are you feeling like pressure are you like clenching your jaw? Like, what are some of your telltale signs of like, I should probably pause?
When I'm getting snappy.
Okay.
I'm like, hey, it's like the quick, like, bop, 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 bop. There's not a lot of love in that. It's a lot of commands and demands, which only escalate my kids. It's like using the middle name. Like when the next time it works, it'll be the first time it works. Yeah, parents go to that well all the time. We're going to use that middle name. Then we're mean business. For me, it's, hey, it's the quick snappiness over stuff that doesn't matter. And it's usually end of the day, like for me, it's usually around either a deadline of like, we need to get in the car by this time to get to this, or it is bedtime and we need to get you to sleep. Daddy's recording a podcast, or it's 9 o'clock, 9:30. If we don't do this, you're going to stay up late. And then tomorrow's going to be wrecked because you're not going to get sleep, but you don't conceptualize that because you're 3. And it's fighting against things beyond our control. And I think if I take a step back and talk about another strategy, is that I think that radical acceptance of the lack of control we have with little kids. And it's like, for us, we're nearing the end of Little League season, but we get back from our games and practices. It's late. It's a school night. It's a work night. And it used to be like, we just got to get you to bed. All right. When we get home, we're going to go right to bed. And they're like, I don't think so, Dad. We're going to have a snack and we're going to hit each other and we're going to throw our stuff all over the place. And as soon as I just realized like, this is what it shall be, we will not be getting any of the adult stuff done tonight. All right, fine. It doesn't matter. And now we can go to bed later, but happier, versus later and pissed off at each other.
Yeah. Can you, radical acceptance? See, I know exactly what that is, but could you, by the way, it's an amazing lifelong practice. Could you tell our guests what radical acceptance is?
Well, to me, it just means an acceptance of reality, like whatever it is. Like we are going to not fight against whatever is happening and not wishing it was different. I think that's a big piece of it, is a lot of the pain points. And it's almost like a therapy session for me. So if you want to charge me, I get it. But a lot of the pain points and frustrations that, looking back over this first 6 years of being a dad, come from the expectations in my mind and the difference, the delta in what reality actually is. And this could be like, I've gotten angry at my kids for getting sick. Like, it's not their fault that they, like, sure, they should have washed their hands more, and we try to use that as a lesson, but we have a trip planned and now they're sick and now we're not going. Or my wife and I have the only day off together in 3 months together to be alone, and they get sick. And the pain of wishing that wasn't so versus the reality that it is so and your plans are ruined is where the pain comes from, versus saying, okay, for our anniversary this year, our baby daughter was home with us and we went and bought pants and a new dryer. And then we went out to dinner with her while we snuggled her. And that's what our anniversary was. And it was a much happier one than sitting there with my fist clenched, ruining the fact that my kids have yet again gotten in the way of another mommy daddy date. So
so well said. Those that are listening, like, you may want to replay that part, because I totally resonate with that practice. I too relate to that 100%, is that wishing or it's not it's not fair, that whole thing, which causes that internal resistance, which takes the difficulty and just amplifies it. It's kind of like, the analogy I give with myself and the clients I work with, it's kind of like being in the ocean and getting pissed off that the waves keep coming.
Yeah.
Right. And then trying to stop the waves from coming. And then at times getting now mad at yourself, maybe that you can't stop the waves from coming. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it creates this tension rather than just acceptance of like, hey, I can't control this, but I can control how I respond in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I can choose differently, you know?
Yeah. And that's an improv tenet is yes and. We agree and we build together that acceptance of reality. And it's not easy. For those of you listening, don't think that I'm like, oh man, this guy's got it. Like it's taken a lot of practice, and it doesn't happen every time. But I think what has helped me, and I don't know if this is a useful tool or something that's sort of like negative, but like when one kid gets sick, when you have a family of 2 or 3, like the whole family's going down. Like as much as you would try to like separate them in your head, just take the next week of plans and assume they are not happening. And if they do happen, it's like a happy bonus. It's that sort of dopaminergic of like, if you are expecting happy and you don't get it, your dopamine is lower than if you get an unexpected happiness. Mm-hmm. So for us, like that's one way we approach that sort of one kid gets sick. I used to think, well, maybe they'll be better in 2 days and everything will be fine, instead of letting go. And I this is something that my parents they don't understand. I'm like, well, Jake's sick, so we're probably not going to make it next. Oh, don't be so negative. I'm like, you don't understand. Like if I think that we're going to get there and it doesn't happen, I will be more upset than where I am right now. So trying to make the most of those moments that where the air quote, the plan goes not to plan, and still trying to find the happiness in it. And I mean, one other thing I do as well is like zoom out. Like my kid is sick. I'm upset. All right. Zoom out. What do they have? A cold. Zoom out. It's not a chronic disease. Zoom out. We have medicine to take care of it. Zoom out. We have a great pediatrician. Zoom out. In 10 years, we'll forget this. It's hard when they're there. They're fevering. They're shivering. They're angry. Like my kids get angry when they're sick. Some kids get sweet when they're sick. Not mine. They get angry. They're angry sick kids. Typical like man cult. But yeah, it's taken by the third kid. I'm finally starting to get the hang of it. My poor first kid's born the brunt of my learning, but
that's okay. Mine did too.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel
it'd be tougher for it.
Yeah, no, I relate to that. Everything you just said, I'm like, yep. I'm like, great. I'm like smiling, not because I'm laughing because that's exactly what I've experienced multiple times. Like at this point, try to separate kids. Now I just want them all together. No, it's just get it done with. Otherwise, it becomes like 6 weeks of the domino slowly falling, and then you finally get hit at the end. It's like, you think you make it? No, it pulls you back. And then the two things that I'm, really resonate as you're talking is, that lifelong practice of radical acceptance, of just accepting the moment as it is. Not that you like it, not that you want it, not that you hope for it or approve it. It's just, it is what it is right now. This is reality. And I can resist it or I can accept it. And that acceptance leads to kind of relief. It leads to coming up with a new solution. Now it's not always easy. It's definitely not easy. It's a daily practice. And I too struggle with that. I too get stuck in my own internal resistance at times, which absolutely creates more tension for me. And I know this. I teach people this, and I still get stuck. So I'm also with you in not being a perfect dad, perfect man. I got flaws, but I'm always willing to admit my mistakes, take responsibility, and say, hey, dad messed up. I need to take a breath, guys, right? I need to take a breath, right? And my kids know, you need to take a breath. Or what could dad do? Oh, you could walk away. Yeah, you're right, I could walk away. So it's kind of like this, we're working through this together and learning together and teaching and all these things. And with that, radical acceptance, I love the zoom out. What a great image of just pause and breathe, zoom out. Okay. And then kind of going through, which is kind of helping you get more into like what are the facts? What's really going on? Because in the moment, right, that moment can really just be so overwhelming, especially if you had something planned that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And how much that could just create more tension, right? And that zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. What a great skill. Everyone listening, write that down. That's a great skill. What a wonderful skill to kind of practice of just pausing, reflecting. Because when you do that, what's one or two differences you notice from not zooming out to zooming out, like that you've noticed internally for you?
I think you said the word relief. It's realizing that I'm actually pretty blessed, and I'm pretty lucky. And I'm not wishing for illness. Like we have a beach trip planned in a month. I really want to go. It would really be hard to if something happens and we can't go. Yeah. So if you talk to me in a month and something comes up, I'll be like, I'm accepting it through these gritted teeth. But I think that if we're in a place where your biggest problem is your son misses a baseball game because he has an allergic reaction in his eye, and by the end of that day, he's feeling better, that's a pretty good problem. Like my wife and I say it all the time. I think we got good problems. Like we got a house, we got food, we got family, we got friends. We have, knock on wood, our health. Acute health, like a viral illness, a cold, a flu, whatever.
Yeah.
Not good, but we got Tylenol, we got ibuprofen that we can treat them with. And it helps being married. My wife was an ICU nurse for years. So her like framing of sickness is like, they're upright and breathing, they're good. So I think that for the new parent, the first time that kid has a fever, this is it. It's like your whole world. It's like being in high school again. Like there's this whole world. Like you go off to college or you go off to work, and the world expands beyond the four walls of your high school, the few hundred people that are there. Like when you have a kid, it's back in this tiny world, and everything is this person that you made, willingly or unwillingly. They're there, and you're there to take care of them. And if you don't have a background in taking care of a sick kid, if you've never seen a kid with a fever, if you don't understand that if they get it to 103 or 104, that like it's bad, but it's not the end of the world. And like if you give them Tylenol and they're feeling better, they're not that sick. Like really sick people don't get better when you give them some Tylenol. Like kids are amazing. If they're sick and they're like, I can't move, and you give them Tylenol and they have a fever and it gets better, they're like, I'm bouncing off the wall again. So it's hard, and it comes with practice. And so like to circle a bit to the book here, it's geared to the ages 0 to 5. And you were kind of nodding earlier. It was like, oh, I've been there. I feel that. And I think for the people who've had a chance to get a copy of it and read it ahead of time, like the dads who read it are like, oh, I was reading it. It just felt good to not feel like I'm alone. And I think that's getting back to what you're doing here as an integrated man and integrated father. I think the sharing of our experiences, it doesn't undo the suck of them, but it makes us feel not alone, like we're doing something wrong. It's just part of the experience. And I think society has deemed it, and I think moms have it even worse than dads, like it's on you. You got to do it all alone. When in reality, we're meant to be a tribe. And so if you have a neighborhood of dads, or if it's at this podcast and you're hearing me and you talk and you're like, oh my gosh, thank you. I felt the same way. That's really the relief. There's the word again. Like there's that relief.
Yeah. Yeah. The relief that we are not alone.
Yeah.
And now we can very much feel isolated and alone. That's a very common thing I've heard in my office, is the feeling of I'm alone in this. And often it's stuck in isolation and stuck in their head. And there's some very real experience as to why they might feel that way. Lack of, so many reasons, but that is such a huge theme. And you just, right there, that whole, and that last piece you just shared of like knowing we're not alone, reading this book, I think that is the relief that I would say most men that I've worked with would benefit from, is knowing I'm not alone and I'm not the only one. And it is about having connection and community in a tribe that we can lean on. And how men, contrary to maybe what some people might think, when you get men in a room, in a group, it doesn't take long for men to kind of open up and begin to kind of lean on each other. It really doesn't. It takes one guy in a group of men to kind of be the lead and risk. And then people, they kind of start to fall in pretty quick. I've run numerous men's groups, and it's like, at first it's that, it's the hesitation. It's like, oh, I don't want to share anything. And then it takes one guy, and then all of a sudden they just start eating it up, because we all long for it. We all want that connection, to feel seen, to feel heard, to be, I'm not alone in this, and have that tribe, that community, Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of the things I write about is building up your like dad tribe. You can't do everything alone. Like I'm not handy, so I have people around me that are handy. All of the people that you have in your network, like lean on them when you have your kid, because the time you have to get anything done is going to be like almost nil to non-existent. And so don't be afraid to, dudes don't like asking for help. Like famously, we'll like be having a heart attack and be like, I'm fine, I don't need any help. And like, you're literally dying. But it could feel like you're dying when you're drowning, when you're having this new kid. And I, like an example, not that I write about in the book, but my best friend had his first kid a year ago, and just one of those like babies that just cried constantly. And he and his wife are type A, read the books, ready to go. And they're just like, what is going on? They were frazzled. He told me, he's like, you can't reason with it. I'm like, yeah, it's a baby. So we sent them like some like door delivery meal service gift card, right? Here, have a dinner on one night. And so if you're a dad listening to this and you have new dads in your network that are struggling, like a little gesture like that goes a long way. It's these little things that can add up that just give you a breath. Then the cool thing about having kids is when you get like a 10-minute break, it can feel like a weekend off when you've been in it constantly. So it takes the breaks, they hit better when you have kids.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Yes,
You
totally.
know, it really is. And what a great, and I want to second that. I think if you, if your dad or, mom's listening to this, to some degree, moms probably do a better job at this. And I'm, again,
Hmm.
generalizing, is that finding a new mom or new dad and sending them that food, sending them that, like, it really makes a difference. It's like that little breath, even for a moment, of like, okay, it's not so overwhelming, because I
Yeah.
think it could be so overwhelming, especially with the first.
Hmm.
Um, and depending on the kids, like even the second or third, depending on so many factors. I mean, having a kid is not all kids sleep a million
No.
hours a day. Mine didn't. So I get it.
Yeah.
No one slept for months. So we had friends that slept all night. And we're like, what? They sleep? We're like, we haven't slept since I don't even know when.
Since
Um,
6 years ago.
yeah, I don't know. I've had constant sleep deprivation. I don't know how I'm
Yeah.
functioning.
Hmm.
And it really goes a long way. And I think that is such a blessing to give away, especially if you're in that place, you can have awareness and you've gone through it and you're seeing guys, like, just go for it. I mean, the worst that's going to happen, I don't even know. They're going to reject the food. I
Yeah.
don't think so. I think they're going to be thankful that someone is like
Hmm.
willing to help them out.
Yeah.
Um,
It's yeah.
yeah. So final two questions. One, uh, final two questions. This is a very important question. What's something currently that you're listening to musically?
Currently that I'm listening to musically. So I don't know what it is. There's something about seasons that I have, like seasonal music. Like there's holiday music.
Yep.
Something about April, May makes me want to listen to my like emo punk rock stuff. So I've got the Newfound Glory Radio rocking hard on Spotify. I've been doing that for like the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's
Nice.
like something about this time of year. There's always weed, so I'm outside weeding and
Yeah.
listening to that. It
Yeah.
might be because it reminds me of like graduation and that sort of emotional feeling, but yeah, man, it's my buddy and I we got the same musical taste. We just keep going back and forth. Like, remember this classic? Remember this classic? Boom, boom,
Uh-huh.
boom, boom.
Yeah.
So that's what's been hitting my ears lately.
That's funny. It sounds like my house. Yeah. Newfound Glory. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The
Yeah,
other day we were driving to the mountains and we were doing like, oh my gosh, something corporate, and
yeah.
we had all these bands on, like, Jimmy Eat World and all
Hmm.
those things. So I see your 311 poster there too. So it made me think of that. Anyway, it's always cool to hear what people are listening to and spinning. And it
Hmm.
sounds like, again, my playlist. But and the final question is, where can we get your book? Where can people pre-order and grab it? A copy? Where can we find your work and get support? Where,
Yeah.
where are those things?
So my book it's just like all the other books. It's on Amazon now for pre-order as we're speaking here. I think it's the May 7th. Yeah, it's all blur. Yeah, so it comes out May 12th, 2024. Whenever you're listening to this, if you go to my website coryjenks.com, so CoryJenks.com. My dad and mom were cheap; they didn't buy the vowel in Cory, so no e there. Don't put that e in Cory.
Hmm.
You can find out everything I'm doing. You can get my first book, Permission to Care: Building a Healthcare Culture That Thrives in Chaos. You're a dad, probably listening to this, or a mom, so you can get, I guess I'm a dad now, the humorous handbook for newest dads who don't want to suck. I have some pretty cool pre-orders on there. Actually speaking of music, I have a dad playlist that was sort of inspiring as I was writing and editing the book. Dad workout, dad travel checklists, just some simple dad gear if you're new to having a kid. There's different like levels, buy one book, buy 5 books. Here's the deal. You email me, you follow the instructions, you order one book, and you say you heard me here. I'll give you the fiver for on the
Hmm.
house, because I just want to thank you and your listeners.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's recipes, my workout that takes 15 minutes twice a week. So it's the book's got recipes, it's got other resources. It's like I reference other smarter people in the books. It's like go read these other experts.
Yeah.
I'm a tactician in the field as a dad.
Yeah.
But it was a blast to write. It's fun editing
Yeah.
it, fun, getting a chance to share with the world. And I think that at worst, you're going to read this and have a couple laughs. And
Hmm.
dads, you could use a laugh. We could all use a laugh. But I think at best,
Yeah.
you're going to walk away from this having, dog earing the pages, putting some notes in there, going back to it, knowing when I travel, I'm going to do this, or when my kids are getting kind of ornery, I do that. And
Hmm.
ultimately, if we can suck a little less, we'll be better for our kids, better society, and just a stronger world. So
Yeah.
aiming big, but always aiming to get some laughs too.
Absolutely. And those listening or watching, all the links, they're going to be direct in the bio below to the book, to the website. That way you don't have to memorize it. Just click on it. It'll take you right there.
Just
Easy.
hit the
Simple.
link. No
Just hit
spelling
the link.
tests.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's just right there. And Cory, thank you so much. It was great talking to you. I really appreciate your
Yeah.
time and appreciate the work you're doing for dads and your care and your heart, and keep up the work you're doing. And the impact you're having on the men in your life around you and the men that will read this book, even the moms that will read this book. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for all that you do, man.
Oh, this was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great night.